If you're a high school dropout from a rural town, please leave immediately. This is a banquet hall. The star of today's big event is Emily, and she's saying some awful things to me. I'm just a guest and also a distant relative, but that doesn't matter. It's all about reaping what you sow. By the time you realize this, you will regret it. I am Beth, and 32 years old. My husband Chris and I met at a speed dating event, the kind of event you go to when you're still looking for a partner well into adulthood. My parents were disappointed in their only daughter. Chris's family owns a business, and one day he was supposed to inherit it, but instead, he's working as a sound engineer. Chris is amazing, though. He understands my career and is always kind and supportive. His parents are also easygoing and kind, and while I have a big extended family, there's just one person who gives me trouble. That person is his sister Emily. My sister-in-law Emily, who's 2 years younger than me, has been a constant source of frustration. It all started when I visited Chris's family for the first time to give a formal introduction as his fiancée. My name is Beth, and I'm engaged to Chris. His parents were excited about our engagement, but Emily looked me up and down, her lip curling in displeasure. So, Beth, huh? She's older than me and kind of pale. It was like she couldn't stand the idea that her brother's fiancé might get more attention at family gatherings. I apologized since I couldn't hear her clearly at first, but she repeated herself this time, turning her criticism toward Chris. Hey, Chris, where's she from? Some well-off family like us?
What are you even talking about? Beth's parents own a big ranch.
What exactly does that mean?
They raise cattle, pigs, and grow vegetables. They're farmers.
Suddenly, she raised her voice. A farmer? Then why don't you look all rugged and worn out? How did you get those fancy manners? You wanted to marry into a well-off family like ours, didn't you?
What was she talking about? For a moment, I thought maybe she really did have some kind of princess complex. I dismissed it, but she started laughing like she was a queen or something. Her parents and Chris tried to stop her, but she didn't care. Ever since that day, when she found out I only had a high school diploma, she's been calling me a dropout and uneducated. She even joked that she was against our marriage because we came from different social classes. She continued to hold that grudge, and during the wedding she constantly looked annoyed, even clicking her tongue. After Chris and I got married, she looked at me badly every time I visited their house as Chris's wife. Don't use the front door. I don't want the neighbors seeing you coming and going from my house because of your background. It was the worst. She acted like letting a smellless farmer into her home was going to leave some kind of bad smell. But I had to leave quickly that day. Her attacks weren't even clear enough to count as sarcasm, but they were still deeply unpleasant. And this so-called princess didn't even have a job. Despite her degree, she stayed at home unemployed after graduation. Every time I visit, she's always there, so I've started avoiding Chris's parents altogether. I feel bad, but I've also distanced myself from my own family because of all the tension. None of this is really Beth's fault. Since you were busy with work, she didn't pay much attention to my parents' house. But one day, during a conversation, Chris frowned awkwardly when he realized Emily was getting married. Can you make a plan to attend the wedding? I felt so sorry for Chris, who looked worried. I replied with a smile that I understood, but Chris seemed to think he had made plans he wasn't excited about. My father-in-law and mother-in-law, and Chris, gave her a lot of warnings, but I guess she hasn't listened to them because she's overly confident her ideas are right. Well, at a wedding, there's no time to talk things through slowly, so I don't think she'll say anything. I thought that, and after preparing the clothes I would wear that day, I tried to forget about it as much as possible. And then, on the day of the wedding, reception venue was this way, but aren't you tired? I'm okay, Chris. After the lavish wedding ceremony, the event was held at a spacious venue, attended by relatives from both families. A surprisingly large number of business associates and friends were also invited. Emily's husband, Elijah, runs a family-owned restaurant in this area. Even Emily, the daughter of a company president, can feel that she's marrying a rich man. As we entered the venue, the groom's parents walked past me, keeping an eye on Chris and me. I smiled and greeted the dignified couple. Lately, Emily's been bragging about the groom every chance she gets, so I hope that will calm down once the ceremony is over.
It's a good thing she's happy about getting married. As we made our way to our table on the red carpet while chatting, I was shocked and frozen. To my surprise, on the seat with my name tag was a huge decoration that read, "Welcome from the smelly countryside." What's more, the gifts that were properly placed on other people's seats were missing from mine. Instead, there was a piece of paper that said, "No gifts for an uneducated farmer." What were they thinking? Surprisingly, Chris blushed on my behalf and almost stormed into the priest's waiting room. It's not a good idea to make a scene right now. There's no way I wouldn't be upset about such a childish prank, but I think my priority is to get through the ceremony peacefully. Chris looked unconvinced, but I managed to remove all the rude decorations from my seat.
I'm sorry to sit down, but my younger sister, who doesn't understand anything, won't listen to me even if I try to explain.
It's okay, Chris. I understand. I pushed aside my inner thoughts and smiled at Chris. Maybe it was the effect of my smile, but even before the reception started, I felt a bit tired. The bride and groom, Emily and her husband, entered the venue as the announcement was made for them to take their seats. She had been insisting that she needs to be married by 30, and her cheerful expression was now replaced by a gloomy one. I didn't really want to see that face right now, but I knew I would be able to go home soon. I kept a smile on my face. The reception went off without a problem. Thank you, everyone, for coming to my wedding today. Around the middle of the reception, the groom and Emily started giving a speech, and the atmosphere became calm. In that atmosphere, everyone turned their attention to the bride and groom. I was ready to make Elijah happy. I would like to thank my entire family for raising me with great care and watching over me as I grew up. The priest changed his appearance. The 30-year-old priest seemed even more relaxed than usual, perhaps because he had been in the spotlight and his friends had told him he looked great. There was a buzz in the venue as people wondered how it would be received, but I guess it's natural for people to get excited about such a once-in-a-lifetime event. I gave a round of applause for Emily's heartfelt speech. However, up until this point, it was just a preface. I guess she didn't have enough time to speak on the microphone after wearing that beautiful dress and being in the spotlight. In addition to my speech, I will add an announcement. At the beginning, I thanked everyone in the Forbes family but my sister-in-law, who was a junior high school graduate and grew up on a farm in the countryside, wasn't included in my family, so I didn't thank her anyway. If you can, please get out of here right now. Elijah's face quickly turned blue, and he started to heat up regardless. I'm sorry, Elijah. To be honest, I didn't want to invite an uneducated farmer from the memory seat of us aristocrats, but my brother definitely told me to invite her.
I guess I'll have to call her because...
Elijah, you're such a kind person, but today's wedding reception made me ready. As a princess, I shouldn't have anything to do with a sister-in-law who smells like rural from now on. At the end, she didn't listen to what the groom had to say, and he glared straight at me and said some strong words. You lovely small farmer sitting there casually. You're a disgrace to our family. Get out now. She was looking down at me with a clean face. I was stunned, but next to me, Chris was clenching his fists.
How far does she want to go with this?
So if Emily agrees, then I'll leave. I felt the power of my husband's anger rising, so I quickly stood up. If this turned into a serious sibling rivalry, it would be a disgrace to the family. Besides, Emily really didn't understand anything, so I forced a smile. I left the show venue with Chris, but I definitely couldn't let things go like this. In any case, I'll make sure to make you regret insulting my family.
I'm really sorry, but no matter how many times I've tried, she won't understand. What did she mean by saying that you are a lowly peasant?
Emily got so excited that she thought she was a princess.
I didn't want to think that my little sister was that dangerous.
It was a wedding ceremony. As we walked out of the luxury hotel, my husband Chris laughed weakly and was on the verge of crying from the sadness. But I had already regained my composure. Within a few steps, as I expected, I received a call from a high-end hotel. From the moment I picked up the phone, the hotel staff tried their best to apologize. The hotel staff apologized for not being able to stop the bride from making rude comments. They begged us to come back to the venue, and Chris, who was listening to my reply that he understood,
had a worried look on his face. "Are you going back? And how did the hotel staff know your number?" "They wanted us to come back because there were a lot of work-related people at the venue, so they asked us to come back." Chris was satisfied with my words, and we headed back the way we had just come and entered the luxury hotel again for the reception. The parents of the groom and Elijah were waiting in front of the venue, and they bowed their head and apologized to me, but I couldn't let them. I stopped them in a hurry and entered the reception hall that I had just left with the groom's parents and my husband, Chris. When we stepped into that quiet hall, the groom, with a serious look on his face, returned next to Emily, who was numb. "Thank you for coming back." He bowed his head deeply. "I'm embarrassed to see you bow so low to a lowly person." "Stop it. Stop it. Why don't you just shut up?" Told harshly by her new husband, Emily froze her face. Her face was saying, "You're not allowed to tell me like that." Ignoring the priest, the groom, Mr. Elijah, continued to bow his head towards me. "I'm sorry that she's been so rude to you. It was my fault that I didn't see that she was such a stupid person and married her. We just had a wedding, but Emily and I are divorcing soon." It was supposed to be the greatest day for Emily, and on that very day, the divorce was declared. Furthermore, she seemed unable to take the situation and smiled slightly. "What are you talking about? I just announced that I was separated from the farmers. I cannot stand those people of low status who are uneducated, as I was born with a curious background. Isn't it the same with you, Elijah?" "So, what are you really talking about, Emily? You didn't try to find out even a little bit about my family's management before we got married. Don't you even know that Beth is the manager of major farms that we have finally started doing business with them?" "What's that? Farmers are farmers after all." Mr. Elijah's knees dropped like he was in a comedy routine. This is not new that Emily couldn't understand my family's business. My parents were extremely busy helping out with their ancestors' family business, which included running several famous hotels in metropolitan areas and regional cities. But my parents started a different job because of their daughter, me. My parents were worried about my physical weakness. They apparently decided to make sure that everything I put in my mouth was to their own satisfaction. They invested all of their resources and built a huge farm in the countryside. They produced safe, delicious vegetables and meat using all the materials and human resources they could think of and created a dining environment for me. Then they took me to the farm, thinking it would be best to spend time in a place with as much fresh air as possible. I moved to the countryside, which is also my home base. Thanks to my parents, I had gained a lot of physical strength, but by moving to the countryside, I had spent a lot of time commuting to and from high school. In order to keep up with online courses taught by experts who have studied extensively about the family business, they needed advanced knowledge other than agriculture, and as I studied obsessively, I realized that I can have the academic ability of a university graduate. I learned this on my own. Even in the countryside, if I wanted to, I could take business courses all over the world. I started helping my parents manage their farm, and when I got married, I took over their place. Thanks to the hard work of my parents, we are particular about the quality of the vegetables and meat we produce on our farm. The luxury hotel Emily was married at had a long-standing relationship with my farm from my grandmother's era, so it was a priority. That's why all the luxurious meals served at the reception came from the farm I run. And for a long time, I've been wanting to use our own vegetables at the family restaurant run by the groom Elijah's family. However, since I didn't want to compromise on quality, I was concerned about whether or not I would be able to withstand mass production. Even after I told them that, Mr. Elijah's company kept asking me excitedly to get the vegetables down, so I decided to. We had agreed to a contract by specially increasing the facilities at my parents' home. I had repeatedly consulted with Mr. Elijah's parents and executives from the company. In fact, today was not the first time I had met the groom and his parents. It was only Emily who didn't know. I think the groom told her, but if she understands like that, neither my husband nor my parents-in-law have had any hardships. After listening to the obvious story, she glared at me with her eyebrows raised and continued. "I am a princess, a farmer with a little money. It's my wedding. Don't let the farmers stand out more than me. I don't like it after all." She turned so much that I could see her nostrils. And what's more, her husband didn't seem to have any words to say. My husband, Chris, forgets his anger towards his sister and asks an honest question. You say about peasant and a princess, but isn't it just a funny joke? What, are you kidding? I'm a princess. He said this with a stern look on his face, and I'm sure everyone in the audience was confused in their hearts. As their representative, Chris interrupted. No way, how can you think like that? My parents have been calling me a cute princess. I'm a princess from an aristocratic family, right? Most of my everyday clothes were dresses. Didn't the analogy of example make sense to you? Emily, we're just running a company. It's just a normal family. If anything, Beth has a grandfather who runs a hotel, and she's inherited a gigantic farm from her parents and is running it properly. I think she has a better social standing. This is something she's been told many times before. It seems like it finally hit Emily's heart when he said this to Emily in front of relatives and friends who looked at her with blank stares. Oh, it's a lie, right? I'm not a princess? Mom and Dad, I'm a cute princess. Emily's face turns bright red as she visits her parents in the family seat. However, her parents got so dizzy that they supported each other until they collapsed, shook their heads, and denied her being a princess. What a huge misunderstanding. There's no way America still has a class system today. Which one is missing education? The groom, Mr. Elijah, looked at Emily with completely cold eyes. It's rude to say that I don't have any class. Even if I'm not an aristocrat, I am a graduate from university, so I'm very different from that junior high school graduate. So, you still don't understand the greatness of Miss Beth? No matter how much I try to tell you, you still don't understand that it's not the servant or academic background that matters in a person, but what's on the inside. I'm begging you to get a divorce. When Elijah asked her for a divorce in front of a large group of guests, Emily's face suddenly turned into a very serious expression. No way! I was 30 years old and I was able to get married at the last minute. I had caught someone who had more money than any other friends of mine, and I thought I would be happy as the wife of the president of a big company. I am not divorcing. Finally, she started crying, and the relatives at the venue were turned off by Emily's words. Elijah, the groom, had no choice but to throw himself in the cold after her unexpected remark. And when the hotel staff rolls their eyes at him, a staff member comes out trying to rip the princess away from the venue. Trying to resist while clinging to him, Emily said, Please, Elijah, don't call for divorce. You can be embarrassed also that we've had such a short married life. You're the kind of person who would complain to your sister-in-law, even if she wasn't in the position of managing a farm. Elijah, I made a mistake. I love you. Please reconsider. Emily gets so violent that it takes 5 people to stop her, and she gets dragged out of the venue. On the way, she turned to me and shouted with all her might, Hey, I'll admit that you're Beth, so do something about it. You're better than me, so I didn't want you to be praised. I was just thinking I'll never call you a farmer. Since my sister-in-law and my business partner are getting married, I was planning to wash away all your past words and actions and celebrate. But today, I will never forgive you for what happened to me. I don't think of you as family anymore. I think the same goes for my father and mother. Her older brother, Chris, is just as cold as I am, and in an even colder tone. If my father, mother, and brother cut me off, how am I going to live? From now on, I'll have to work and make a living on my own. So, left speechless by the cold earth, Emily was gently dragged out of the venue by the staff at the ceremony. Maybe the fact that my father-in-law and mother-in-law didn't particularly express their wishes may have stopped her. Chris, my father and mother may have severed ties, but I might be able to continue our relationship with Beth a little longer. There's nothing to be careful about anymore. And there's no reason to be kind to that person anymore. I can be most strict. I smiled as I stared at the splendid double door that Emily had exited from. After that, the lawyer said Emily Forbes and Elijah's divorce had been finalized. Emily's behavior at the reception led to her being treated like a pariah by her friends and relatives, and all of the relationships she's ever known have collapsed. Of course, with my husband Chris and my parents, also apologized to me, and we agreed to cut ties with Emily, but I decided that I couldn't just leave her as she was, since she had given up on farming. We decided to bring her in because the farmer who was delivering the wood coverings to us was suffering from a chronic labor shortage. When I told him about her personality, the farmer told me that we had to retrain her metal. Emily's parents-in-law forced her to take him to a wooden farmhouse, but what was waiting for her were 10 labors followed by 10 labors. Naturally, Emily started crying and tried to run away. However, she had nowhere else to go, and her ex-husband's super talented lawyer is demanding the full cost of the wedding, and she has been cut off from all her relatives, so of course she has no choice but to work to pay it back. And since the woodworking farmer is also my business partner, when I occasionally show up, it's frustrating that he has to bow to me as an employee, and every time he cuts the wood to the limit. Emily, who is constantly being scolded by her boss, who is a farmer, has her hands covered in blisters and cries every day. She seems to be struggling every day, but it's all her own business. She makes comments that look down on the farmers, which makes me realize how hard they are working and how precious their work is. Now I learned that Emily's ex-husband Elijah immediately had an arranged marriage, and this time he married an honest, cute princess-like girl, and no one had anything bad to say about the speed converter. It seems like the situation is finally getting more intense, but it's too late. She'll never be in a position to act like a princess again in her life. As for me and my husband Chris, we're still as close to each other as ever. I was living a busy life, but by joining a new family restaurant chain that is expanding across a wide area, the farm's profile has increased considerably. We are now receiving calls from various top companies, and no matter how much we increase the number of facilities and staff, it's not enough. Although we are happy to say that we are making products that are cleaner, and the working environment is cleaner, we are careful not to forcefully raise production costs and not cut quality, and appreciate the attitude that puts the highest priority on our employees. Perhaps because of this attitude, many people want to work at the company I run, and in the end, we are able to increase the number of business partners. My husband Chris is very busy himself, but he takes care of my health and looks after me at home. My in-laws and my real parents, who have given me all their support, are proud of me and respect me for growing the farm. I will continue to provide safe ingredients to many people